I'm kind of setting up what I think the situation we have right now in Missouri and in the country is, and talk about some solutions to that situation. And hopefully you all can provide some feedback. I'll try to answer any questions about what's going through my mind. And I hope we can put Missouri in a better position now or in the future than it is now. I'm afraid that America is kind of like the swimmer out in a big lake who's gone down once, and he's come up and he's gasped for air, and he's gone down again, and he came up and he gasped for air, and he's about to go down the third time. I'm afraid that we very well may be close, if not past the point of no return. I'm afraid that we can't wait 8 years, or maybe even 4 years, before we start to reclaim and restore the Republic. To do that, we need some very, very special men. We cannot any longer, in Missouri, I believe, allow the political machine to select who our leaders are. And any of you that have been involved in politics in Missouri the last 10 or 15 years, and it's probably been this way forever, know that the people are given only a choice from the short list that the kingmakers supply us. Phyllis Schlafly wrote a book how many years ago, in the 60s? And it was called An Echo, Not a Choice. And
Choice, not an echo.
a choice, not an echo. Asking for a choice rather than an echo.
Right.
And the point was that back then she identified on the national level the fact that you've got these kingmakers, and they just give the people a short list from which to choose, or if that at all. And the problem is that everybody on that short list is insufficient to do what it takes to pull that drowning man out of the lake and resuscitate him. Every one of them is more likely to cause problems than fix the problems, or at least not fix the problems. And I'm afraid that we just don't have time. I'm afraid that we can't wait 4 years or 8 years for us to slowly regain a foothold on the Constitution and our Republican form of government. I really think that's true with respect to Congress. For years and years, we've been trying to send good men to Congress. We've sent men like Todd Akin to Congress, and he's one of 435. And maybe he can drive a stake in the ground and maybe he can hold his own. But it's 1 out of 435, and he finds a buddy, and so that's 2 out of 435. And maybe they find 50, and that's still not enough. 100, it's still not enough. How long is it going to take for us to send enough good men to Congress to reach critical mass, to the point where they really will draw a line in the sand and tell the status, not on my watch? I don't think it's going to happen soon enough for us to save the Republic. And that's why, even though I think that Ed Martin is the kind of guy that would go to Washington, D.C., and I think that he would pound on the table, I think he would jump up and down, and I think he would say, not on my watch, but it wouldn't be long before he was relegated to a broom closet. Because there's only 2 choices. When you have the kind of people that are in control of Congress, you can either lick the speaker's boots, or you end up in a broom closet. And maybe you're good, and maybe you can get out in front of the media and you can pound the table, but you're still just 1 out of 435. I think that we need our best men where we can leverage their abilities the best way to the greatest effect. Right now, I think that the real battle is in the states. I think that the real battle is with men who are willing to tell the federal government, when they try to pass unconstitutional federal edicts, like, for instance, Obamacare, we need real men who will say, go pound sand. It's not within your jurisdiction to tell us how to run health care in Missouri. It's not within your jurisdiction to regulate our businesses in Missouri. It's not within your jurisdiction to tell us what kind of guns our people can own or can't own, what the capacity of the magazine in their rifle is. We need men that have enough backbone to restore the republic. And we need them first and foremost, I believe, in Missouri, where they will do the most good. That's at the core of this idea behind drafting Ed Martin to run for governor. Now, I've been all over the state, and I've talked about a concept called nullification. And that's kind of a fancy word, and it sounds kind of archaic. But all in the world nullification is telling someone who enters into your jurisdiction that they are outside of their jurisdiction, and we're not going to follow their edicts. It would be kind of like Castro coming to America and saying, you have to have a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. What are Missourians going to tell Castro? They're going to say, go pound sand. What if, say, the governor of Delaware or Massachusetts came to Missouri and they said, we think you need to have a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, and that's the way it's going to be? We would tell him to go pound sand too, right? And that's kind of a no-brainer. I think probably even Governor Nixon would tell Castro to go pound sand. But it takes real guts to tell the federal government to go pound sand. And that's the kind of guts that we need in the governor's office. So when Missourians pass something like Proposition C, and we tell the federal government that you cannot impose a mandate on us, an Obamacare mandate on us, and some federal official comes and says, well, you can't do that. Or even the federal courts come and say, you can't do that, even though 71+% of the people said, this is our standard in Missouri. When that happens, we need somebody that's got the guts to say, go pound sand. It's really not a difficult thing to do, but we seem to lack leaders that are willing to do that. Now, in contrast to that kind of leader, what do we have in the governor's office right now? We have a governor that's trying to go around the legislature, trying to go around 71% of the voters and implement portions of Obamacare, trying to set up by executive fiat the health insurance exchanges. We have a governor that, in spite of the fact that the Missouri General Assembly rejected the China hub bill, is in China, I think still right now, cutting a $4 billion agreement that I don't think states are allowed to do constitutionally with the Chinese government. Which brings me to another issue that we've got to deal with. We've got this problem of federal intrusion into the states. And it's going to take guts to tell them that we're not going to let you exercise authority where you have no jurisdiction. But within our own borders, we have a system of large S that would make Pendergast blush. We have a system that results in millions and millions, in fact, billions of dollars being handed out to the favorites of the king. In the St. Louis area alone, in a 10-year period, there were over $5 billion, with a B, dollars worth of subsidies for redevelopment projects. It's because the St. Louis area doesn't have enough strip malls, right? And when they did a study, when the East-West Gateway Alliance did a study, they found out that that resulted in zero economic growth over that period of time. They found several jobs that were created during that period of time. They didn't know whether those subsidies created the jobs or not, but if they did, and you divided the money by the subsidies, it was something like $360,000 worth of subsidies to create one job. Now, that doesn't make economic sense, but we keep doing it. We keep doing it. We keep doing it. Why? It's because there are people that are profiting from it. And the people that are profiting from it are the very people that are giving us the short list from which to choose our elected officials. And folks, this is how I feel about it. As a citizen of Missouri, the way I feel about it is I'm going to say, not on my watch, not if I can help it. It's time for us to say the people are going to be back in control of their own government. And that means that we just don't accept this short list anymore. That means we go to extraordinary efforts to try to make sure that the people are given a real choice for their elected officials, and especially the governor. Because anything that our legislators do is so easily thwarted by a governor. All we can do when we have the wrong governor, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, all we can do at best is tread water. And with Governor Nixon making end runs around, like trying to establish health insurance exchanges, I'm not sure we can do that very long. So, in a nutshell, that's why I think it's more important for this tremendously good congressional candidate, Ed Martin, to change races and run for governor instead of Congress. The reason is because it's so incredibly more important to have the right governor than it is a right congressman. Mm-hmm. Now, Ed's got to make that choice. I want you to understand that anything that we might do is not going to constrain Ed to one decision or another. All we can do is help open a door for him and give him the option. That's all we can do. Now, I want to say something else. I should have said this at the outset. A lot of people have said, this is just Ann Wagner's campaign trying to get Ed out of the way. Ann Wagner's campaign is behind this. Ann Wagner wants him out of the way because she knows that he'll beat him. I think Ed will beat Ann. I really do. But I can assure you, this was not Ann Wagner's idea. This was not Ann Wagner's campaign's idea. This was not an Ann Wagner supporter's idea, because this was my idea. I'm to blame. If this causes damage, in fact, there's a Facebook page you can go to. It's called Ron is a Crumball. And you're welcome to go there and beat up on Ron all that you want. But please just understand, I'm not twisting Ed's arm. We can't twist Ed's arm. He's a big boy. He'll make up his own mind. But please be fair to the Ann Wagner campaign. They're not behind this. They might hope that it happens, but they're not behind this. So, we have this choice. We let Ed stay in a race. I mean, we're not letting Ed. We encourage Ed to stay in a race that I think he'll win. Or we encourage Ed to get out of a race that's going to be a tough, tough fight to take out an incumbent governor who publicly looks to be pretty clean. There's more dirt there than you can imagine. But publicly, he looks pretty clean. He's kept his cards close to his vest. He's kept his powder dry. And on the one hand, this thing that's more of a sure thing, that's when Ed goes up and he gets to decide between being locked in a broom closet and licking the speaker's feet. On the other hand, he fights this battle. That's going to be a tough fight, and it's going to need all of us deeply involved. And then what can he do? He can effect revolutionary change. And this is what I think, and maybe I'm a dreamer. I am a dreamer. In fact, my new motto is think big. We think, if you think small, you end up with small results. That's the way it works. It's a law of nature. If you think big, you may not achieve big, but you'll achieve bigger than if you think small. So, what might happen? Let's say that we have someone like Ed who is an ardent constitutionalist. We have someone like Ed who's willing to draw a line in the sand and say, federal government, that's your jurisdiction, and this is ours. Don't cross that line without our permission. And we have somebody in Ed that believes in true free market principles. And so instead of acting like a banana republic in which we're doling out favors to the lobbyists that squeaks the most, instead of that, we recreate an environment of economic liberty in Missouri, a tide that rises all boats. And I believe that with adhering to true free market principles, we'll see Missouri start to outshine the states around us. And I think that that will be catching. I think that when other governors, like maybe the governor of Louisiana, sees that, yes, you can tell the federal government, go back in that box that the founders put you in, he'll start making the same demands. And when you see other states see that Missouri is starting to create jobs because entrepreneurship is rising from the 49th position where we are now to the first position, and they'll say, hey, maybe we need to decrease regulation. Maybe we need to decrease the oppressive tax burden. Maybe we need to respect property rights. And I think that'll be a good example for all the states. I might be arrogant, I might be thinking too big, but I think it's very possible that electing the right governor in Missouri might in fact save the entire republic because a good example will be set. Now, call me crazy. All I know is that if we keep going on the same path we are right now, we're headed for sure destruction. And I say not on my watch. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's just it. I think that's the single most important thing for us to understand. We're not deciding what Ed's going to do for him. All we're doing is giving him an option. And, you know, to address the media tearing him up, I have two things to say about that. First of all, three things. First of all, things have changed. Ed changed from a Senate race to a congressional race because an elder statesman decided that he was going to run after Ed had already declared and was working on that campaign. And like a gentleman, Ed stood aside. I don't think anybody blames him for that.
He succumbed to the machine?
That's why, yeah.
I don't think he did, no.
That's why
I think
Andy
he
sure
really
looked like
wants
it.
I think he
to
respected, I
run.
think he
Yeah, was gonna
respected the
run
elder
for Senate,
statesman.
but she wouldn't.
Aiken, Todd Aiken.
Oh, Todd Aiken.
Yeah.
When you talk about Aiken, I'll be running for Senate now.
He's running for Senate.
Right.
He's been a congressman for a decade, and now he's running for Senate. And he went into the Senate race after he, no, don't need to go there. But the point is that was a pretty good reason to change that race. I don't think anybody's holding that against it. Okay, now let's look what's happened since then. Since then, we have a lieutenant governor that's kind of made a mess of the campaign. You know, whether he deserved the reputation that's resulted from it, there's a scandal. And that scandal has killed what was already a pretty bleak opportunity to beat Mr. Nixon. And so I think that in the coming weeks, that you're going to see Peter Kinder say publicly that he's not going to run for governor. Maybe he's going to run for re-election as lieutenant governor. I don't think he's going to run for governor. He couldn't win before, in my opinion, and he sure can't win now. That's a change. That's a change in the situation. Now, I don't know about you, but I want leaders that are smart enough to adapt to changing situations. When would you ever send a general out on the battlefield and say, this is the plan, and you do this no matter what else happens? What changes? You know, the enemy might decide to flank you, but I want you to keep on going this. You know, so what I'm trying to say is it's perfectly reasonable. The media will try to make something out of that. It'll last 45 minutes. And I'll tell you another factor in that. If we're all saying, we've been thinking about it, and we think Ed would make a great congressman, but we really need him first and foremost as our governor, then that disarms the media. That's why you have a draft Ed Martin campaign. And it's not Ed Martin saying, well, I want to look over here, I want to look over there. The people are drawing him into the campaign. We give, as you say, Ed this option. It doesn't diminish his congressional race whatsoever. Nope. In fact, I think it helps him. I think what it's saying is that there are these people that know Ed and love Ed, and they think that he's even worth more than Congress. He's so valuable, we would rather have him as one of one governors in the state than one of 435. So how does that hurt his congressional race? All in the world we're doing is giving him one more choice, one more option.